primul panel al zilei. Doamnelor și domnilor, cum pot tehnologiile concepute pentru un anumit scop să schimbe regulile jocului în diferite sectoare? Primul panel al zilei va explora lumea inovației cu dublă utilizare. Am plăcerea să îl invit în scenă pe moderatorul panelului nostru, Georgios, Kolliarakis, Senior Advisor, Austrian Institute for European and Security Policy.
Good evening, hello. Very glad to be here, very privileged. Georgios Kolliarakis. I think, first of all, I would invite my speakers to come on the stage. Okay, so I'm welcoming you to this session. After the important statements we have heard before, we will attempt a deeper dive into the very challenging issue of dual use. I have to say that I am one of the coordinators of the European Union Dual Use Export Control Program, which is the European Union program which aims at international partnerships for the restriction of illicit diversion of dual-use technologies for weapons of mass destruction. However, I am here with my expert capacity as a senior advisor of the Austrian Institute for International and Security Policy. And I have the pleasure to have many and very good speakers on this session. I think we will try to be very brief so that we enable also some discussion and questions with all of you. It is a great opportunity since so many knowledgeable people sit not merely on stage but also in the audience. And if I allow myself to make an introductory statement, it is the moment where we need to balance three cardinal issues. First of all, promoting dual-use research. Second, fostering partnerships within Europe but also outside. And third, and not least, restricting and protecting those technologies from illicit diversion. These are three aspects also of policy that needs to be balanced. It is everything but self-evident how we will succeed on that. Somehow the US or China do have playbooks. We, as of now, lack that sort of playbook. For that reason, I think we will try to cover as much of the challenge as possible by bringing also some examples. The speakers are very good at bringing their own hands-on experience in that. So the way we will proceed, I will invite each one of the speakers to make an introductory statement, and then we will try to have some cross-references and some Q&A with the audience. I would be very glad to invite Tina Andoljsek from the Ministry of Defense of Slovenia for her intervention. The floor is yours, and I mean, you have microphones in front of the table.
Is this working?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. First of all, greetings from my part. Also, a very warm thank you to the organizer for hosting us today in this beautiful building. When it comes to dual use, I come from the Ministry of Defense, so dual use is something that is extremely, extremely important for us, as it is probably for armed forces in every country of the European Union and the rest of the world. Dual use, in general, when we're speaking about it, we know that a large part of development of any kind basically is done in the civilian sphere. So when it comes to military adaptation, we basically use that technology and we use that knowledge for the purposes of clearly armed forces, rescue, protection, relief, and so forth. a lot of let's say networks, supply chains do exist in the civilian sphere already. So we are not, at least in the majority of the cases, not the main operators. We are users, sometimes coordinators, as it is in our case. And therefore, sometimes those systems are vulnerable when we're speaking about climate change, when we are speaking about political instabilities, conflicts, and so on. So in the sense of preparedness, what we can do, we need to be prepared for it, especially when we're talking about interruptions of supply chains, when we are talking about being left without fuel, without electricity, and we need to be prepared to be robust. We need to be prepared to be resilient in case that happens. But we're not talking about, large networks which are already existing. We're talking about small networks, small grids that are very resourceful when it comes to energy use, and where energy is locally produced, locally stored, and has a strong digital support. That's why we need, let's say, civilian cores, universities, researchers to collaborate with us very, very firmly. Coordination needs to be basically on the daily level, just like we are doing it back home. And that's how I use the word militarization of that technology. So that would be from my end. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Tina, for raising first the issue, which is out there since a couple of years or even decades, that the transfer that decades ago that was taking place from the military into the civilian domain in terms of dual use, it has been reversed. So innovation takes place in the civilian domain and gets transferred also to the military domain. And the second issue, in my understanding, that you have raised is exactly in terms of preparedness for infrastructure protection. And you raised the crucial cross-cutting issue of energy infrastructure. It demands those hand-in-hand playbooks in the ecosystem of stakeholders. So thank you very much for that. I would gladly invite Mr. Volker Raffel, who is the president of the board of directors at the Romanian-German Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for your intervention. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. And in addition to that role, I'm also the CEO of E.ON Romania. So we are distributing gas and electricity. And here comes my view on the critical infrastructure which we actually are. So first question is, what happens if there's no electricity? How to defend a country if you do not have energy? How to have a society running if there's no electricity? No heat. And if there's no electricity, first you think, okay, now it's getting dark. We all know that because sometimes it happened in our life. But if it's no electricity for a longer time, that it's also getting cold. And then you do not have drinking water anymore, and so on and so forth. So just to show how essential it is. Second consideration is, why don't we continue like we did run electricity grids 50 years ago? Is there something, someone drives there and puts a switch back and then electricity flows again. But when E.ON entered the distribution business in Romania 20 years ago or 22 years ago, we have had 12,000 employees. The average salary has multiplied with 10 in the last 20 years in Romania. So that would have meant that we increase the costs by something like that too. Today we have something like 6,000 employees, but we operate a far longer grid because we have extended the grid and we have reduced the outage time from 1,800 minutes in average to 60 something last year. So, and all this is only possible due to digitization. And today we have not only 100 power plants in the country anymore, but we have hundreds, thousands of prosumers which you need to deal with and to administrate somehow their power. So, first point, digitization is a must, otherwise we are would be too expensive. Second, it is an infrastructure which is under attack. So we regularly see cyber attacks. Happily, it's only cyber attacks so far in our case. But we see more and more, and the number of these attacks has increased tremendously. So from the incidents we have seen in the past years, 89% of them have happened in the past 4 years since the war in Ukraine started, and something like half of it have happened in 2024 and 2025. So that means we have a clearly increasing trend, and 11 incidents reported as being hybrid war attacks to EU countries have been targeted to critical infrastructure. That comes along with the necessity to prepare, which we do. However, we see that there is still society in other dimensions than directly cybersecurity is not putting enough attention to these risks. For instance, the Romanian regulator, but I think that is the case of many regulators in many countries, is not putting sufficient attention to the fact that we have to invest more and more in cybersecurity and digitization at the same time. If that is not provided properly, of course, we remain too vulnerable, more vulnerable than we should. But we cannot avoid digitization, and if you have digitization, we cannot avoid to take care of cyber. Eurelectric, which is a European association of our industry, says we need 250 billion euro investments in digitization and cyber in the next 10 years. Okay, that is a number for all of Europe, but that shows somehow that there is something to be done. And last point from my side would be also society must prepare a bit better for crisis scenarios. All grid operators, private, state-owned, in all countries do their very, very best to avoid any outage. So do we. Still, we see it cannot always be avoided. Let's look at Spain last year, for instance. Now imagine in Bucharest is an outage. How many people are in this very moment in a lift going from one level to the other? And if no electricity is there anymore for the whole city, can you imagine how many interventions it means for fire brigades to intervene to take out the people from the lifts? Why not to put a battery in each lift that at least the lift after an outage can go to the next level, opens the door, and then he stops? Why not? If there's a telecommunication operator and after 2 hours of outage somehow the antenna is not working anymore because there's no more reserve power, then we have a bigger problem than just the electricity outage. We cannot communicate to each other anymore. We need cash. No electricity, no card payment. And all these are things which I think we have to raise awareness to, because whatever we do and discuss here, if society is not prepared, it's a vulnerability too. Thank you.
I thank you very, very much, Volker, for two things, primarily. First, for underscoring again that electricity outage is not trivial. It may be known since decades, but it has so many cascading effects in other sectors that it needs to raise our attention, policy attention, investing attention, and so on. The second issue, in my understanding, that you stressed and we need to note down, is that we are speaking about cyber-physical infrastructures. And this entanglement makes things more critical, so to speak, for the society, but also for national security. And here comes, I think, this dual-use moment that we need to be really prepared. I have to, on the European side, we have since 2022, first, the directive on critical entities resilience, and also the directive for raising the levels of cybersecurity. And since last year, we have also the Preparedness Union strategy, which is exactly stresses what you said at the end of your intervention, we need a whole of government approach, we need an all hazards approach, and we need also a whole of society approach. That is something that I guess also other speakers will refer to. You need business, government, and research go together in that respect. Thank you very much for that again. And I would invite Professor Nectarios Nasikas from the Armed Force University, from the Hellenic Armed Force University, for your intervention. Nectario.
George, thank you very much for this kind introduction. My name is Nectarios Nasikas, and I'm a professor at the Hellenic Army Academy, which is the military university of Greece that educates future career officers to serve in the Greek army. I am also a moderator for the working group on the protection of critical energy infrastructures at the European Defence Agency, and also a mentor for the NATO Diana accelerator in Greece. We already have heard very interesting interventions by the previous speakers. I will try to continue the thoughts of the last speaker about the protection of critical energy infrastructures and emphasize on the cascading effects, which are really important. You heard that if a really, really big disruption occurs, then this is not a problem only for the country that this disruption happens, but it's also for neighboring countries and for Europe in general. If a really major energy facility or an energy infrastructure fails in Greece, in Romania, in Bulgaria, or in France, Spain, we saw what happened recently, it will definitely impose severe cascading effects in other countries. So in this sense, we are all interconnected, and we are going to face more and more, I wouldn't say just vulnerabilities, but issues that need rapid response, not only in the defense domain, but also from hybrid threats or threats that we have not seen their impact yet, like climate change. We see issues like that, and we try to address issues like that. Having said that, we also heard about how important this is for other sectors, like the banking sector. We saw that the recent events happening in Spain, affecting also other countries, led to a lot of citizens actually taking up cash money from the banks. That caused a small effect, but a serious effect, and led to raising interest rates for the banks. So we see cascading effects and hybrid effects affecting more and more other sectors of our civic life and also our economic life. One other thing is that in economy, and those of you who are economists know that in order to have growth, economic growth, we need foreign direct investments. That's a given for those who are into business. But what happens in the geopolitical context? A foreign direct investment, if it's from an actor that is not towards the interest either of the country or the union in which this country participates, it's considered a threat. So these are issues that need to be tackled in a world that is changing rapidly, in a world that is facing increasing threats in various sectors, and of course the energy sector is one of the top priorities that we see these issues being really acute. Regarding the protection of critical energy infrastructures and critical infrastructure in general, we are seeing also other initiatives in Europe, like having a defense Eurozone, because these issues need a European response. We cannot tackle them in isolation. The burden for European countries to tackle these issues alone is really, really big. So we are going to see more and more collaboration between member states, more and more harmonization of how we manage critical infrastructure, whether these are airports, these are energy depots, or energy companies, more and more within the European context. So I would like to close with a message that we need more collaboration between Balkan countries, between European countries, and I'm really confident that we are going to follow this road because, as I said, these issues cannot be tackled in isolation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nectaria. I think you expanded now the scope from the cross-sectoral dimension that we have to the cross-border one, which implies also the importance of a whole of Europe collaboration on that. And the second issue that I will tease perhaps another speaker about is the issue of foreign investment. Since foreign investment, while welcome, when it comes into critical infrastructure, it demands some screening in terms on security grounds. However, that hybrid destabilization aspect, I think it will be touched upon by the next speaker, Mr. David Song-Pechenberger from the Hybrid Center of Excellence in Helsinki. And I will invite your statement now.
Thank you. And also thank you for the brief introduction. Maybe just to add on a little bit. So I'm the Deputy Director for Strategy and Defense at the Hybrid COE. And so part of what we do is analyze hybrid threat actor strategies that are targeting democratic societies, as well as ways to counteract hybrid strategies and hybrid attacks against our partner states. Our partner states being the countries of EU and NATO, as well as the EU and NATO as our partner organizations. And just as a quick qualifier, when we talk about hybrid threats or hybrid warfare, we usually mean state-sponsored influence operations or attacks that happen below the threshold of armed conflict. So this can involve, for example, cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, but also economic coercion, the weaponization of migration, and the list goes on, for which, of course, civil and military cooperation is crucial. And maybe to keep in mind that traditionally speaking, democratic societies have strictly separated military and civilian sectors, and we also have very strict legal frameworks for this. However, our adversaries don't necessarily do this. So China and Russia have not kept their military actors separate from civilian parts of society, but rather integrated them with research, with development, with academia, the economy, and many other parts. And so we also have to think of how we better do a cooperation between our civilian and military sectors. This doesn't mean, of course, that we want to imitate authoritarian regimes, but rather find our own ways. Because another point being that if we're talking about mitigating or even counteracting hybrid attacks, we often need capabilities that lie with our militaries. While at the same time, most hybrid attacks, I would say, that are being conducted against our societies are targeting the civilian sectors. And so cooperation between the two is an obvious necessity. And I think I'll leave it at that for now.
I think you make a perfect opening for the upcoming topics of what that silo logic that needs to be overcome, both in research, but also in investment, is a major challenge to be tackled. Also, with regard that hybrid attacks, they do not merely have an impact on societal security, but also national security, and it is a defense topic. And this is most crucial, and as you said, what sort of capabilities our adversaries have, somehow we need to build up in our own democratic societies and in our own democratic way. And this is a challenge. I will give the floor to Stefan Schauer, who is a thematic coordinator at the Austrian Institute of Technology and with a strong track record also in critical infrastructure protection. Stefan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to connect with some of the parts that were just said by my other speakers. So I've been in the working in critical infrastructure protection for about more than 10 years now. And everything started, or when I started, everything was about cybersecurity. Life was easy back then because the physical part, it was solved. So you had your fence, you had your perimeter, and nothing ever happened. So you were just focusing on cyber. Then digitalization happened, and this is what Volker just mentioned. Then you were installing all these little devices that were pulling the switches instead of you. And this opened up, of course, new threats. And back then, it was still focusing on cybersecurity. There was not really talking about resilience. It was just protection. It was not bouncing back. And back then, also, dual-use technology, it was not a big thing. It was not a big thing because you would either do research or you would go into the military part and you would focus on the military research, but you could not do both. So if I remember back then, if you were writing a proposal for an EU grant or for a national grant, particularly where I come from Austria, you would have to describe why your invention is not going to be a dual-use invention. So you really had to say, okay, this is purely for the civilian part. We are not going to do military research. Now, of course, this has changed. So if we look at the past 5 years, the dual use has become more and more prominent, of course. And all the technologies and all the innovation that we are talking about now, like AI, cybersecurity, of course, drones and everything, they are now considered dual-use technologies. And also by the EU, as I know, so these are the main core parts. And in my opinion, these are also the most researched parts now in Europe and all over the world. When you look into the Horizon Europe or other funding frames, then you find all these topics at the top list. But the thing is that if we are now considering drones, an AI system, satellite network, if we're considering that as a dual-use technology, then I think that the border between this civilian and the defense-related research or civilian and defense-related technologies, it's already gone. But the question here is whether the government already knows about that. So just when we take it from that, we have a lot of funding frames and a lot of big funding opportunities in Europe. For example, Horizon Europe and EDF, where EDF is focusing on the military part, so the defense research. Horizon Europe mostly focusing, of course, on the civilian part, but the technologies that are developed, they are dual use, so they are researched in both parts. And the thing now is that I think, and this might be an unpopular opinion, we are not lacking dual-use technology. We are not lacking dual-use innovation. We have it everywhere around us. The thing is that we are funding it. We are governing it. We're doing the procurement in different ways. We have two different worlds. We have the civilian world. We have the defense world, and they are not really talking a lot to each other. So this is what you also just said. So we have these silos when it comes to research funding and also procurement and stuff like that. And this is maybe a way we need to find to get out of that and combine the silos a little bit more.
Thank you very much for that. And the time to discuss research funding schemes is now in preparation of the next multi-annual framework program for research and innovation. Again, in order to promote synergies and reduce duplication because what we need is something which works on the ground. So thank you, Stefan, for that. And I will proceed with Arnaud, who is an Associate Research Fellow for Cybersecurity, Digital Technologies and Artificial Intelligence at the Jacques Delors Institute. Arnaud.
So thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here at this conference. I work at the Jacques Delors Institute in Paris, as well as the University Paris-Saclay on the connections between the twin digital and climate transitions. And so just to continue on what's been said by my colleagues, it's essential to emphasize that the cyber security of critical infrastructure in Europe is a fundamental topic. This has been highlighted since the war in Ukraine in many ways, since the annexation of Crimea 10 years ago. Russia has been waging a cyber war on NATO and on Europe. And so there is a strong connection between the member states of the European Union. So even if a cyber attack will target a particular country, it will rapidly spread to all the others. And so hence, it emphasizes to what extent it is essential to reinforce European policies and legislation in this field. This is particularly challenging for a number of different reasons. First of all, it's because defense is still a national prerogative. This means that unfortunately, while there has been a lot of progress over the last 10 years in terms of European policies in this field, we have a multi-speed Europe in the cyber domain. And so some member states have enacted far-reaching policies in this field while others have not. And this creates the problem of weak links where malware can penetrate a member state before propagating to infect the others. And so this problem of a multi-speed Europe has been apparent, especially since at the beginning of the war in Ukraine. And, thus it is essential for the European Union to go further. Now, there has been some progress over the last few years. Now, you mentioned some laws which were passed just, in 2025. So the EU Cyber Resilience Act or the EU Cyber Solidarity Act. But even if we look at the primary law in this field, NIS2, it still provides a lot of autonomy to member states, which perpetuates the problem of weak links. Thus, it is essential for the European Union to go deeper and, to enact more robust policies in this field with greater harmonization across member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arnaud, for that. This better choreography among the EU member states, it is a must also in that field. That's clear, because we have real challenges and not theoretical challenges on paper to tackle right now. Again, on the research side, I would invite Koen Gillissen, who is a research coordinator for cybersecurity at the PXL University of Applied Sciences and Arts, for your statements. Koen.
Thank you for your introduction. So I'm purely speaking from the academic side. So enabled to promote dual use in academia, I propose, like I know that you have to protect IP, but I propose that you build a small yard with a high fence instead of a big fence. So as academia, we can thrive in strategic and fundamental research, but if you build the fence too wide, you will curtail our innovation. So if you don't allow global collaboration or EU collaboration, if you protect our IP too much, you will curtail the innovation. On the other hand, looking at the IDFs and Horizon Europe's, I propose the following statement: fund us, but do not direct us. This will also curtail our innovation. If you look at the past, the internet itself was invented at a university. Take a step back and think about what would have happened when the IP was kept more closely guarded. Then we would be in a very different world. On the other hand, I also want to make a point. So the world is the digitalization is increasing at a rapid speed, but our human capital, the knowledge of our human capital is not. So I propose, from a European standpoint, we should heavily invest in STEM profiles, making our children and our grandchildren more resilient. If we don't have STEM-educated children or more STEM investments in our education, where will we be in 10, 20, 30 years? For instance, if you look at critical infrastructure, at least this is in Flanders, all residential homes have digital meters. They could be taken out by a cyber attack. How resilient is the current generation to restore this? No electricity in the home, no more hot water. I don't see a lot of people in my age group being resilient enough to combat such an attack. I guess, yeah, this summarizes my stance on the dual use.
Thanks a lot. We have to point to the fact that this, it is a dedicated policy which is emerging right now at European level. It is called research security, and it's trying to balance this openness, the necessary openness in partnerships, in research, with a mandatory restriction in order not to let sensitive technologies flow, get exfiltrated, or flow out to malicious actors. And probably, since you are based in the Netherlands, the first European conference on research security is scheduled for the 26th and 27th of May at the Technical University of, hosted by the Technical University of Delft, but this will be an international and pan-European conference. Now, probably a footnote on what you said, and perhaps the audience is not necessarily familiar with that term of small yard, high fence. This has been the technology governance model applied in the post-World War period for the nuclear and radiological technologies. And this is something which can be implemented with such technologies because you have high security laboratories, very, very limited personnel with that, nuclear engineers with that technical skills and expertise. And then you procure, ministries of defense procure directly with such labs, so to speak. The situation is a fundamentally different one with information communication technologies, which are all over the place in startups and industries, which cannot be confined or administered and governed by such high fence, small yard models. And this makes them really very, very vulnerable for misuse. I think this is the perfect pass to the next speakers, so to speak, who have to deal with financing models and come also from startups. I will invite you, Alexandru Nitsa, who are the head of innovation at BRD Group Société Générale, for your intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgios. Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to this event. So I sit at the crossroad of novel technologies and a large systemic bank here in Romania, which is BRD. As you all know, the banking sector is also a critical service. We run a critical infrastructure. And because of this, we need to be very careful how we implement novel technologies and how we push them inbound to our colleagues throughout the organization, because we face the same challenges and risks as my co-panelists have already mentioned. And because of this, we found that we need to upskill our workforce, right? We have also built our AI Academy, which looks to have a common foundation for all of our employees and then specific tracks for our professionals. Because what this does is basically enforces, right, top management, or basically it allows them to be more comfortable using new technologies and having them tested out, deployed faster. Because we were discussing before the panel about the speeds of implementation, but as an analogy, before we can run, we need to walk first, right? So we have to have specific governance in place to know that we operate by specific models, specific standards, right? Before we can go out and do this, because the threats are also outbound and inbound, right? And we do not want to generate additional risks from within, right? This is very important for us. And of course, we are partnering up with a lot of tech companies and with consultants that help us improve our overall processes, but it's not a given, right? We need to double down on our efforts to be able to push these novel technologies even further. And once we have this comfort cushion, let's say, for our employees, then we will be able to actually accelerate and have the foundation to intake all of these new technologies which come from cross-innovation. So that would be my take. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think the circle is closing with that funding models that we have touched, and I think this is also the moment to discuss funding modalities for dual-use technologies. Thank you very, very much. I'm inviting the last speaker, and I think we are good in time, so that we have also interaction with the audience, to Nassim Abouyala, who is the founder of a startup, Midflow. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having me. I think we split the panel in two. We have the academia part, the scientists, and here we have the private sector. But also I'm the baby one, because I'm between two giants, the EON one and the Societe Generale. So Midflow is a startup, automation startup, AI startup. We are trying to help the big companies to automate. Even though for us as a startup, and I would like also to raise up this issue, we as a startup, it's very hard to enter in the big companies. So I'm also expecting that the big companies to create the sandbox where we as a startups can, and we want to show our technology. Because if we want to understand with the due diligence, with the compliance, with the procurement, so we never find out how we can to test our solutions. On the other hand, I think we as in Europe, we need to focus on regional level. I would like, and also I'm expecting that from Romania to be able to go in any country in European Union to test our solution and to find clients. Because to be honest with you, if I would like to go to China, that will be impossible. But if a Chinese company, they want to come in Romania, it's more easy. I would like also to talk on the behalf of the people who are they trying to be more innovative. And we need to support the innovation in Europe. And by supporting the innovation in Europe, we don't need money, by the way. It's not about money. We just want to have access to the market. We just want to have access to the clients where we can to show our solution, to do a demo, but we also want to fail. But we want to fail together, because that is the meaning of innovation. I often saw in the big companies that many clients are expecting from us as a startup to have the IBM or Microsoft thinking. And that is really impossible, because our solution and also our technology is changing almost every week. For us, keeping up with the changes that we are seeing in the market is almost, to be honest with you, is something impossible. For me, for example, every day I have to look at our roadmap to see what our competitors do, the smallest one, but also the biggest one. And I think the outcome of this panel, how we can use the dual innovation, is not It's not only about security, it's not only about energy, but we need to see also the innovation starts from universities, from the young people, from the young entrepreneur. We need to support them, also to support us, to make sure that we can deal with the competition that we are seeing from the big companies, especially the ones outside European Union. Because if European Union is not good, we are not good. And I think the young generation, especially in the very old continent, they have a role to fight and to keep the innovation fire up. Thank you.
So thank you. So perhaps Nassim, it is not by chance that you sit as a baby between the giants. So you start now the collaboration already during, now this is the proof of the pudding. Thanks very much. 2 issues on that. Collaborations within and outside the European Union. This is exactly something that we need to be cautious, exactly in terms of protecting the economic security of the Union. This is one thing. But it is good that you raise the issue between the small, not merely across sectors, but also the issue between the small and the big ones. Do you think that the small ones, a startup like you, has the means, the awareness to protect, to safeguard the innovation from malicious misuse when it's in the value chain of your collaborations? And where do you see the challenge there? I mean, do you see a challenge there at all?
You know, when you are a startup and you are a very big, and you are a very small, let's say, company, at the end you are a startup, you have 2 main priorities. Your product is the market fit, making sure that your product is working, and to find potential clients. Yes. It's almost impossible to think more than this, because every journey has some stages, and many startups. And honestly, I see also that for the companies that have total sales over 10 million euro. From my perspective, they also have no clue about all this risk. I know that there are some programs about this, and the first time I heard about them is today from you, actually. But I think the access to the information is almost impossible. The gap is pretty huge. You know, we are trying to work as a firefighters. We are trying to solve, let's say, to turn on some fires, and focusing on scaling up or to be more resilient. I think we don't have the mindset, we don't have the necessary education, but we need to find some centers to come to us and to support us. Look, you have to think about this if you want to be more competitive.
Yes. Also, this is the issue also of outward investments,
Exactly.
not merely the inward investment.
Yeah.
Thanks very, very much.
Thank you.
Georgios?
I will invite some questions from the audience, and I'm sure there are enough microphones to, if any one of you wants to take the floor. Let me see first, Stefan, from the audience. Does anyone want to ask a question to the panelists? I see no one, so Stefan.
I wanted to pick up what Nazim said. So this, as a startup, you're in this position where you have to go to market. And I was asking myself when you said that, if society is putting you in that corner, so that you don't have the option to develop security by design into a product, because you have to go to the market, you have to do quick launches, you have to find customers, you have to put out proof of concept and stuff like that. So this might be okay if you're talking about general technology, but if you're specifically talking about dual use, maybe we need to create opportunity to give you that amount of time, you as startups, that amount of time to work on that, maybe with funds, maybe with different support. And the second thing that I was thinking of is imagining a startup. It's like you're taking the tools that are there. So you're using a cloud provider, you're using an AI provider that is on the market, and I'm not saying names now, but they won't be located in Europe. So here we are already creating also dependencies from a technological stack, from a technological perspective, on organizations, on companies that are maybe not located in Europe, and maybe if we are talking about dual use, then this might not be the first choice if we can make it. But if these technologies are already integrated in a startup and integrated in a new product, then later on changing that might not be an easy choice. Same as later on adding security, just to count on that.
Thank you.
That was a good complementary comment to what we have been discussing. I think trying to summarize in a couple of sentences the very meaningful inputs that you have all delivered to that discussion is that we do need to learn a more complex choreography among many stakeholders, from research, from governmental authorities, and from business, in order to tackle a big political and societal challenge in that respect. We need to remain focused and somehow bear in mind that our aim is to make dual use a capability and not a liability, because it can be very easily turned against us in the course of throughout the value chain. I mean, in critical infrastructure, particularly there. So while we develop, we need to be alert and aware of its high value and also of its high risk, so to speak. I thank you very, very much, each one of you. I thank a lot of the audience, and I hope that the discussions will go further and continue in that respect. Thank you very much.